Welcome to Module 6B, Child Tax Credit and Credit for Other Dependents. By the end of this module, you will understand the difference between the child tax credit, the additional child tax credit, credit for other dependents. You'll determine the eligibility for all of the child tax credits, calculate the amount of the credits, and identify the documentation needed for filing. This module is broken down into the child tax credit and the additional child tax credit, taxpayer qualification, and eligibility requirements. You'll determine how much the child tax credit and additional tax credits are worth. You'll learn a little bit about the credit for other dependents. We'll do a recap, and then we'll end with a knowledge check. So let's talk about the child tax credit, or CTC, and the additional child tax credit, the ACTC. The CTC is a non-refundable tax credit that allows taxpayers to claim a maximum of $2,000 per child to reduce their overall tax liability. The ACTC is a refundable credit, maximum of $1,400, that may be applied if the value of the child tax credit is greater than the total amount of the tax liability. Note, it is possible to claim the ACTC if the taxpayer is not able to claim the full amount of the child tax credit. So let's talk about qualifications and eligibility requirements. Who can claim the child tax credits? The answer is any taxpayer with a qualifying child can claim the credits. In order to be considered a qualifying child for these credits, a dependent must be one of 6 things: under the age of 17 on December 31st of the tax year, they lived with the taxpayer for more than 6 months of the year, they did not provide over half of their own support, they meet the relationship criteria, they are a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or resident of the United States, and they have a valid Social Security number. Note that last one is a big change from previous years. Another note is that special rules can be applied for divorced or separated spouses. It is possible for a custodial parent to allow a non-custodial parent to claim the CTC by signing the Form 8332. So let's talk about how much these credits are worth. The CTC is $2,000 for each qualifying child up to the total amount of the tax liability. The ACTC is up to $1,400 for each qualifying child. Now let's talk about the credit for other dependents. Beginning with tax year 2018, taxpayers may claim the credit for other dependents when they have someone who qualifies as a dependent who is not a qualifying child for the child tax credit. Note, the credit is not refundable. The maximum credit amount is $500 per qualifying dependent. The credit cannot be claimed for any dependent that is a qualifying child for the child tax credit. The dependent may be a qualifying child or relative. The dependent can have either a Social Security number or an ITIN. The dependent must be a U.S. citizen, national, or resident of the United States. Here's an example. Francine, age 43, is divorced and earned $43,000 in 2019. She supports her widowed mother-in-law, Connie, whose only income is Social Security. Francine's sons, Henry and Neil, and Connie all lived with her in Chicago all year. Her sons do not provide any of their own support. Everyone in the family has a Social Security number, except Francine and Henry, who have ITINs. Now, who can Francine claim for the credit for other dependents? She can claim Connie, as she is Francine's dependent under the rules for qualifying relative. She is not a qualifying child for the child tax credit because she does not pass the relationship or age test. Henry qualifies as her dependent under the new rules for a qualifying child, but she cannot claim him for the child tax credit because he does not have a social security number. And she cannot claim Neil for the credit for other dependents. Since he's only 15 and has a social security number, he is Francine's qualifying child for the child tax credit. So let's recap. The child tax credit, or CTC, is a non-refundable tax credit that allows taxpayers to claim a maximum of $2,000 per child to reduce their overall tax liability. The additional child tax credit, ACTC, is a refundable credit, maximum of $1,400, that may be applied if the value of the child tax credit is greater than the total amount of the income tax liability. The credit for other dependents is a non-refundable tax credit, maximum of $500 for dependents who do not otherwise qualify for the CTC or the ACTC. So we'll end with a knowledge check scenario. John has 3 children, ages 10, 15, and 16. The child tax credit for 2019 can equate up to $2,000 per child on Mr. Smith's return. While Mr. Smith's oldest child being under age 17 at the end of the calendar year, this child is included in the calculation for the applied child tax credit. With all of his children under the age of 17, John can expect to reduce his income tax bill by up to $6,000. So we can end with some more additional resources, which are 5 things you should know about the child tax credit. Is my child a qualifying child? You can read more from IRS publication 4491. Up next, Module 7, Refundable Credits.